weed,
I'm
roll, and
Charlie.
in
I have
green.
black hair. I'm also Asian.
Asian.
I love some cars. I wanna crash them. It's Kathy. It's
You had a
Charlie.
temper,
It's
not my
Charlie and it's Kathy.
jealousy.
Kathy. This
Too
is
hot,
a
too
Brontë
greedy.
Classics. Brontë Classics. Yeah. Brontë Classics. Brontë Classics. I'm English.
Also Asian.
And we are dancing, and we're in the club. It's 1800s, but I'm in the club. Oh yeah, Charlie,
Heathcliff,
Charlie,
let's
Charlie,
do a
Charlie, Charlie.
let's
Give me
do
a Grammy. I
bump.
want a Grammy. Okay.
Is it a Grammy? I don't know if... Is this a good outlet to get a Grammy?
I don't know. I think this is just like something to do, something cute for the summertime. I don't know. I've kind of learned to not think too hard about Charlie XCX. That's not simply for me, and I celebrate those for who it is for. But I will be here listening to Toni Braxton in my corner.
I quite like Charlie XCX in theory. I like the idea of Charlie XCX more than I like... I don't know. I don't know. I don't understand my feelings, Charlie XCX, and I don't have time. This is the one thing. I have time for everything else. This is the one thing that I'm like, I don't have time.
I think there's a class of British queer that just doesn't have time for Charlie, and I think you fall perfectly in line for that.
Oh, okay. So there's more than... It's not just me.
That is so weird. You just took off a pair of glasses and put on the same exact pair of glasses.
No, they're slightly different. So those old ones are my old prescription. I try not to wear them.
That was just really disorienting for me. I was just like, what's happening? Is this an optical illusion? My goodness. Hi, Vicky. How are you? So Victor just got back from watching Wuthering Heights, and I said we must capture this instant reaction. I would like to hear all about it because I refuse to go to the cinema to watch it. I'll just wait for streaming.
I think it might be a good film to watch in the cinema. I don't know. It's kind of... So it is trash, but I loved it. People were like crying at the end, and I was like, what are you crying at? This is hilarious. This is hilarious from beginning to end.
So what do we think? What is your like overall impressions?
I have no idea if it's good or bad. I don't know. I loved it. I'm really glad I saw it.
Yeah, but I had a good time in the theater.
I'm really glad it was Jason Elordi. What's his name?
Jacob.
Elordi. I know exactly what Emerald Fennell was going for because he looked just like the kind of illustration you would get in like a GCSE.
And you don't support black man
version of... I do not support... Well, no, I do.
Well, he's not black. I think he's South Asian, meant to be, Heathcliff.
Well, it's ambiguous. He's just supposed to be dark-skinned and everyone else is supposed to be white. But in this production of Wuthering Heights, I am glad that it wasn't a black man or like a man of color. Because like Emerald Fennell is not qualified. She is not qualified to wear those shoes. So,
would have to lie to her several times.
Well, I think people have lied to her several times. I think she's lying to us back several times.
So, okay, this is my contribution to the discourse, is that I am so worried that this casting controversy of Jacob Elordi as Heathcliff is going to ultimately result in Emerald being like, I'm going to make a story about someone brown. And I don't think anybody's... Stormy Reed? Stormy, Chase Infinity? Don't do it. Say no.
It's going to be Emerald Fennell's Roots. Do you think the next one's going to be Emerald Fennell's Roots?
Oh.
With who could it be that's not Charlie XCX? Like
Laufey. I said Laufey. It would be like someone annoying. How do you feel about the discourse about Wuthering Heights? Are you partaking in it? Are you like, this has nothing to do with me? This is too stupid? What's going on?
I think I'm going to partake, actually. I was thinking this is a really good companion piece to... I don't want to go into this too much because I think I'm going to try and crank something out for it for next week. But I think it's a really good companion piece to the 2011 Andrea Arnold Wuthering Heights because they're like the same source material. The time frame that they both, within the novel, because the novel's like so sprawling, the time frame they both chose was the same. And they're just like polar opposites. And it was really interesting. And one of them actually does have black actors cast as Heathcliff, and one of them obviously doesn't. So, yeah, I found that really interesting in terms of that. I don't know that it needed to be Wuthering Heights because it's just so different, but it's kind of more fun that it was. I do think that the only reason it's Wuthering Heights is to like troll people into tweeting about it. Like, I think that's the only reason it's Wuthering Heights because there's like almost, it's like the same broad story. But even then, there's all these changes. I'm like, why does it even have to be Wuthering Heights? I don't know. You could just be its own thing. I don't know.
Like I said, I'm waiting for streaming, but I'm intrigued. I don't particularly like Emerald Fennell's movies, but so far I've been supportive of it.
I don't know if I am. I haven't seen.
I was like,
and I did not like Promising Young Woman. And I think this is trash, but I loved it.
Yeah, I just feel like everything she's done has been like done before, but like slightly better. So like Saltburn is, we have Talented Mr. Ripley, we have Theorem, and that was done better.
You said that this was ITV, that like Emerald Fennell stuff is all ITV coded, and I do not get that from this at all. Like I can see what you mean about other stuff. I don't get that from. I haven't seen Saltburn, but I do get that impression from the aesthetics. But this is like...
I will say it was largely inspired by the aesthetics and the conversation about the costume design. That's what I see when I look at her work, which, good or bad, I love some ITV fare. Don't get me wrong, girlie.
Oh, I think this goes way beyond. Like, I think this is great. I think the costumes are insane. They're not. And they weren't even my favorite thing. The best thing was the sets. Like, the sets looked great. It really reminded me of Martin Scorsese's New York, New York, where it's kind of like a pastiche of old Hollywood. I see why the girls are mad. I really sympathize with the girls. I just can't be one of them because I had so much fun. But like, why did it have to be Wuthering Heights? I have no idea. This is why the whole thing was hilarious. Spoilers for a hundreds of years old book. When Kathy dies, there's nothing real to kind of grapple onto. There's nothing real to ground that story. It gets completely lost. And she has no interest in it. I think she had an interest in like Bodice Ripper, like the kind of, it looks like those kind of cheap Bodice Ripper books that you saw in the 80s and the 90s. Yeah, like pulp, yeah. And that's what she wanted to do. I don't understand why it wasn't like...
I'll tell you why. I will give you a reason. And I think this is something that I found, I guess this is the thing that does appeal to me about her work, is that she's a sensationalist. She's like a stylist. This might be a weird comparison to make, but like there's something Chappelle-y about, like David LaChapelle, about her instincts, and that like she basically just wants to grab your attention with something sensational. Yeah. Which I think is why I wanted you to talk about it in this episode, where I will eventually lead our conversation into America's Next Top Model. Oh, clock it. That was thoughtful. Baby, she's a professional at this. Come on now. So Victor and I sat down. I forced Victor to sit down and watch the America's Next Top Model documentary that's currently the gay conversation, I guess, docu-series. And I forced you to endure that. And because I really wanted to, I feel like this is something we must talk about, because
it was not an endurement. It was, I ate I gobbled it all up. And I got through it so quickly.
This was a product that was made for Gooners. This is a Gooner product. Don't you think? This is part of Gooner culture somehow.
I kind of know what you mean. It's like television Gooners, yeah.
Yeah. It's just like stuffing it into your brain for a quick reaction. But before we get to that, I did want to ask, are there any other gay happenings that you wanted to touch on really quickly?
I feel like the gays are in hibernation although the gays were in hibernation for Heated Rivalry as well, I think. Like, that was for straight women. I can't think of anything particularly.
The gays are just like taking a break. They're waiting for the spring to come.
Yeah, I think this is very much for the gals right now.
On the topic of the gays, actually, this might be a good way to get into the America's Next Top Model conversation, because I was reminded watching the show, Raja Gemini of Drag Race fame was like a prominent member of the cast for a couple of seasons there.
I never forgot. I was waiting for her to turn up, and she didn't. I was waiting for that where she walks in as Tyra, and it didn't happen. I was waiting for it to happen. It didn't.
Should we unpack that? Should we unpack Raja and the queerness that was involved in America's Next Top Model? Because a lot of the conversation that has spurned is about like how much it has failed the contestants. Do we want to like start with some pluses?
Yeah, well, if we want to talk about pushing boundaries, and this was like, even as someone who's not, I didn't watch the original series, what really was apparent in that was that they really broke boundaries in terms of gender and sexuality and representing queer people in a way.
That was J. Manuel and J. Alexander were like part of the DNA of the show, like from the first episode. And it was like,
they're doing their jobs. They weren't there like serving other people. It was them doing their interests.
Yeah. And if I remember, there were like some contestants that expressed bigotry towards them, but they didn't give that much space to like thrive. There were people here to do their job. They're just like queer people. You're being a weirdo. It just made me think as well of, so upcoming next proper episode, I have Dr. John Paul Higgins on, and in Black Fat Femme, they have a chapter about Miss J. Alexander and about how seeing her be queer, be visibly Black was something that really helped in the formation of their own identity. So that's interesting. I remember reading that a few months back, and the way that it not necessarily ran counter to some of the narratives about America's Next Top Model, but complicated it by providing a different perspective where someone really learned and grew because of it. I think something we should acknowledge, at least at the beginning.
Yeah, it's kind of classic social media grievance culture where we can't acknowledge the good that something did at all. I mean, I think it's partly because people are so unwilling to take accountability for what they did wrong. You know, we can kind of celebrate what someone did right if they are really taking accountability for what they did wrong. And so we're not doing either right now. We're kind of in a standoff with Tyra and that producer guy.
I would also add like another layer to it, because I think part of what's happening, and the documentary does talk about this happened in the early 2000s. A lot of the people who are watching it and talking about it now are young people who weren't watching it when it was on and are catching up to it now and forming opinions about it. And then sharing those opinions, which is great, but they're kind of devoid of certain context, and they're being shared with people who are not watching the product. They're watching the recap. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. So there's a weird telephone thing also happening where, not to say that the critiques are wrong, but I feel like some of the things are amplified because of that. Some aspects of the critiques are amplified.
Do you think we live in an interesting moment as well where, like, you and I, who were kind of adults before gay marriage, I was just trying to work out when gay marriage was. I think, you know, once it got to 2015 and there was gay marriage, that really legitimized and mainstreamed queer people in a way that, like, people who are, in the grand scheme of things, not that much younger than us have just like a completely different perspective because they were children when it was legalized. And they just can't quite appreciate the boundaries broken because they were broken in such a short time. For some people, it's their whole lifespan. For some people who are adults now, their whole lifespan.
I think that's a really great point about not being able to appreciate the fact that this was boundary breaking, because something can be boundary breaking amidst something that isn't like inherently good. You know what I mean? Like, this was a product that was born out of toxic beauty culture, misogyny, capitalism, and all these things. Something could be good about it. The fact that Isis King was like the first trans woman on television take her hormones on screen was a big deal, despite the fact that that moment in itself was exploitative. You know what I mean? It still was a watershed moment. Not that I'm saying it's a good one, but I'm saying it had an impact in that way, and that should be acknowledged, even if the way that Tyra insisted that it be on, despite the comfort of Isis, and the way that production ended up getting into that bathroom is icky and something that she needs to be held accountable for. We can hold these two thoughts at once, and that is difficult, but it's important to do that if we want to actually find our place in terms of like judging this, you know?
Yeah, I think that's a good point. And I also, just going back slightly to what I was saying about like Top Model kind of being just very, you know, helpful and boundary breaking by just having kind of queer people kind of in quotation marks in the workplace, serving their function within the show. Part of the reason that Drag Race is so popular with queer people is that it's kind of, it's a little bit of a queer utopia outside of the pressures of being queer in real life, where you're facing,
it's a bubble,
transphobia and homophobia. It's queer people in conflict for $200,000, or do you know what I mean? Like, it's, I think that was like a really positive impact that the Top Model's legacy has been, is that it's kind of creating a world where there's still conflict, but that conflict is not homophobia, that conflict is not transphobia. Like, that can give you, you know, even
it's situational. The conflict is situational.
Yeah, and it's often a topic, but it's not the central topic.
Yeah. I like to erase like homophobia or bigotry or racism that was happening on the set and in front of the cameras that we were shown to it. That's obviously not erasing it, but to say that like that created a space where that wasn't the leading narrative, like you were saying. Yeah, I think that was... And
it just makes it watchable. I don't even think it was on purpose. I just think it's part of the reason that it's so watchable to so many queer people is the fact that it's not about a forbidden love because of homophobia. You know what I mean? That people are trying to... It's not about the closet, or it's not about, you know?
I clocked the shade. I clocked the heated rivalry shade. By the way, Hudson Williams, I would like to congratulate you and your girlfriend on coming out. That's all I'll say. That's all I have to say.
I have something to say, because Hudson Williams, it turns out, is a friend of a friend. Apparently, he's a really nice guy. So,
that's nice. But how are you, honey? You've been in a weird place. I talked to you a bit earlier today for a little bit. You were telling me you're feeling a bit...
Are you Tyra? What's happening right now? You're asking me personal questions on the air, just like Tyra did with that poor victim girl. So is this did you know that I would get defensive and this would be like a cool meta reference? Is that what this is?
No. I would never take advantage of your mental health in that way. Not you. Never. I will always endeavor to make sure that the world sees you in your truth.
No, well, I don't want that. Thank you. What are we here to talk about? Why did you call me up? You told me to watch one episode. You were like, just watch one. You were mostly going to talk about it because I have no history with America's Next Top Model, basically.
Mm-hmm.
You've seen all of it? How much have you seen?
I started watching America's Next Top Model, like it had already been on. Like I think it was like the faded glory years. Like I just realized, by the way, watching this show that it ran for 24 seasons. Like that's a lot of content. Like shit. I think I joined probably around like season 9 or so. It's been kicking. I remember witnessing it enter its peak years and then its faded glory years, and then all of a sudden Rita Ora was hosting. So it was a whole situation. I was there.
Rita Ora host not Drag Race, America's Next Top Model proper? Did she host the real series? Not British.
Yeah, the last season of the show, they fired Tyra.
Well, of course, and Rita Ora was going to bring in a new audience.
This was like, I don't even remember. It was like that time when people were like, oh, maybe there's faith.
They've been trying to make Rita Ora happen. I have a bit of an obsession with Rita Ora.
Of course you do.
I saw her play live.
Is she good?
Well, I didn't choose to see her. She was just there singing. I was watching
as often is the case. It's like Pokemon. A wild Rita Ora will like fucking emerge at Pride and sing at your face.
I went to see a recording of the Graham Norton show, and she was a musical guest, and she sang a medley of all her hits, and I didn't know any of them. This is in like 2018 or something, 2019.
I was gonna say, pluralizing that is really generous of you. God bless.
Yeah, she sang like a medley of like 4, 5 songs, 6 songs, something like that, and I didn't know one of them. I still feel like I don't know any of Rita Ora's music.
We're spending too much time talking about Rita Ora. I'm so sorry. I have to cut this short.
You should have thought about this. I'm sure I've told you about my obsession with Rita Ora before.
I didn't know this was a whole thing. I don't think we've ever had a
cringe obsession with Rita Ora, and that tweet about getting 1 million likes, the embarrassing tweet. Yeah. I just think about that I think about that every day.
I think this is the most millennial aspect of you, the slight obsession with Rita Ora that makes no sense to anybody. I will say this, Rita Ora doesn't enter the matrix of my mind very often. I wish her well, but I don't walk into Primark. That's not what I do, okay? Yeah. That's not for me. I walked past it on my way home. Okay, so all that to say is that I forced you to watch the America's Next Top Model documentary because it is the current, I guess, topic du jour. This is what the gays are talking about. Maybe we should talk about it.
Yeah, I would just wanted to say that you asked me to watch one episode and you would carry most of this recording, and I just binged the whole thing.
The text from you at 2 a.m.
3 hours. 3 hours all the way through of whatever that program was called. I can't even remember.
Yeah, no, I got a text from you at 2 a.m. It was just like, I finished all of it. Period. And I was like, oh, I hadn't finished all of it by that point either. I was like, oh my God, I have to finish it now. What did you think? Give me your general impressions. What did you think about this documentary? As someone who didn't really watch America's Next Top Model, what is your impressions of the franchise, its legacy, Tyra Banks?
So yeah, I think I kind of watched most of one season once when it was on when I was like a teenager. It was way before Rita Ora. Maybe I wasn't a preteen actually, but I watched like a fairly mid-season, I would think, like, let's say season 10 or something. And I kind of have vague memories of them in Japan. And there was a girl with short hair that got told off and then kicked out for having a bad attitude. And then what were my impressions of this series? This was the other thing. So I watched a tiny bit. I have tiny memories of that. And then I've actually learned a lot about America's Next Top Model through TikTok, and which they kept referencing in the show, like all these TikToks of people going like, Tyra must be jailed for her crimes and all of this stuff. So
you had a weird Gen Z experience of America's Next Top Model because like you learned on it in the after effect. You saw the clips.
Exactly.
And the people being like, what the fuck was she doing?
Yeah, exactly. And so I actually feel like there was something super watchable about it because I just went through all 3 episodes. I didn't even have to. You told me just to watch the first one. And yet I feel like I've learned nothing. And it was essentially a waste of time. It was really good to hear from the good. I mean, I have no connection to the show, so it wasn't particularly good for me.
It was smooth. I think of it as like smooth brain programming. There was colorful, there was like interesting editing. It satisfied my brain. But to call this a documentary, I would have pause.
Yeah.
I think this is highly watchable. It's highly entertaining. It's not good. As someone who watched a bit of it when it was going on for, I think, probably watched it maybe 5 seasons, and then was aware of what was happening, the controversies as they were happening, and then the after effects as the discourse about it grew over the years. And they barely really scratched the surface. There's also a bunch of other things that happened that people have talked about that they don't. Yeah, there was an all-star season where the winner was disqualified because they found out she was a sex worker, and they said that went against a, what do you call it, morality clause, apparently. Then there was like I said, there was 2 blackface shoots, which they did mention. Which is good. There was a homophobic incident later on in the seasons. There was a lot happening.
But wasn't there a homophobic incident and then Tyra told the guy all about himself?
Yes. I mentioned all of that, I think, because this was not journalism. This wasn't attempting to be journalism, I don't think.
No.
And watching it, the only thing I could think of was this is basically doing a modern form of what America's Next Top Model is doing, because you were just lining up these women and re-traumatizing them in a way to make them talk about all the shit they went through,
and continuing to kind of monetize their stories and turning it into content.
And you made a montage of their horrors, their pain, for entertainment. That's exactly what the show itself was doing.
To me, it also felt like damage control. They managed to get a lot of people on. I think the only significant person that didn't appear was Janice Dickinson, who...
Yeah, Janice Dickinson, Twiggy,
okay. Was Twiggy?
Yeah, Twiggy was a judge for a couple of seasons. What I find interesting is the parts that they skipped, because there was a later on where the show really tried to claim a place of legitimacy within the fashion world that it never really had. And then it brought in people like Andre Leon Talley was a judge, and he was a Vogue editor. And then they brought in these high profiles. There was a genuine attempt, but I felt was glossed over as well. It's a huge show. It ran for so many years, and there was so many global franchises that I'm sure they couldn't include everything, but I thought it was notable the things that they chose.
Yeah, they managed to get Tyra and those other judges on, and it kind of seemed like
there was a negotiation of how much we can have.
Well, it seemed like damage control for them. That's what they had to gain from it, was to say, oh, I had no control over this. It wasn't down to me.
Yeah.
And that's basically all anyone said. No one really took responsibility. There was one point where that guy, the producer guy, was like, I take responsibility for this one terrible incident.
Oh my God. Yes, I made a note about that. So the point we're talking about is there was a photo shoot where they did murdered women fashion sexy. Yeah. And he was just I will take responsibility for this, for the violence of it. And I made a note because I was oh, it's so interesting. This is what you're going to take responsibility for. It felt there was an interesting negotiation that you made about what can I do to claim accountability, but while still saving face and being employable. How can I not claim responsibility for this? I think that was something
HR as well.
Very HR, and I think that was something that tracked throughout. You saw Tyra, you saw Jay Alexander, Nigel Barker, all those people. They were there to try and save face. I found it really interesting the way that Tyra handled that. Oh, she's a demon. She took the position of oh, let's pretend that we've done all the healing.
Yeah.
Let's pretend that I'm aware, I am sorry, and I'm apologetic, and you've all accepted it. Let's just pretend that you have. She's jumping to that point, and I thought that's actually probably really clever. It's slightly Trumpian. It'll probably work.
Yeah. She also had a great line that everyone's been repeating on TikTok today. You all asked for this. That would have been quite poignant if she had really taken responsibility. A lot of it felt like kind of obfuscation on her part. And so if she had sincerely engaged and taken accountability in some kind of sincere way, then I think maybe that would have hit harder, but it just felt like another deflection when she said that. But it was true. That kind of content was so popular. That first wave of reality television was so based on cringe.
I mean, part of the reason why I wanted to talk about this is because I think there is something there to identifying that. Because I think the lineage of the show is very different than something like a Project Runway. The lineage of the show is something like Fear Factor. It is something, it's the more extreme. I wouldn't say American Idol. I would not say American Idol. I think there was like a lot more trauma porn here that American Idol like engaged with, but American Idol eventually just became about people singing at the end of it,
But the first half of American Idol and X Factor and all these shows was...
Yeah, no, I agree. I agree. When I say there's less of it on American Idol, I mean like ultimately by the end of it, it's going to be like 10 people singing and we don't actually have time to get into your trauma beyond like a 1 minute clip before you start singing. You know what I mean? So that becomes different, I think. While this show, America's Next Top Model, like the storyline is comparable to something like Drag Race. It's there from day one right up until the end. It's part of the reason why you win.
It's part of like the thing.
I started this conversation talking about the sensationalism of the show because there was a part of me as I was watching it that felt like a few years from now, I'm going to look at this strain of documentary which Netflix has been engaging in, and this is the second, because they also had a documentary a few months ago about the reality TV show The Biggest Loser, where it's also doing the same exact thing, where it's getting these people who are involved with the show, prominently involved with the show, and then the contestants to sit down and like excavate their traumas and their feelings about it. I feel like we're going to look at this the way we do true crime podcasts now. You know what I mean? Where it's like there's something inappropriate happening here that is still like taking advantage.
Yeah, I think especially with these kind of programs where it was kind of in your face awful at the time, there was some value to something like Quiet on Set, where that stuff was all rumored about, all that abuse there was rumors of all that abuse.
Or Disclosure, the one about queer people and trans people in the industry.
Trans people, yeah. Well, Disclosure was more about, as far as I remember it, Disclosure I remember being a bit more about representation. Representation as opposed to kind of stories of abuse, but there were stories of abuse in there as well. Actually,
it was. I think with Disclosure, maybe the link I'm making for it is because I think the idea of representation and progressivism is something that is so deeply tied with America's Next Top Model, because that was like the patina that they were doing it under. Which is another point I wanted to make. The way that like diversity, it was like it's meant to be a progressive show.
Yeah, and I think that's partly why it was gone after so much, is because they really attached themselves to that. It was a bit like the Lizzo effect. Lizzo got cancelled, I think, so much harder because her brand.
Your queen, your fave.
My queen.
Because Lizzo be eaten. All right, go on.
She was eaten, if I am to make
her.
Yeah,
all right.
By the machine. Anyway, no, my point is she got cancelled harder because of her brand, and I think America's Next Top Model kind of got cancelled harder because of the brand. That's basically my point.
Yeah. The things done in the name of diversity. A lot of the show made me think of something like Extreme Home Makeover. I don't know if you've ever encountered something like that show. Or maybe a more UK-based one is like What Not to Wear.
Oh, okay.
Something like that, whereas it's doing things in like almost a patina of helping. It's something helpful. But then it's like the people who did Extreme Home Makeover all ended up with like massive tax issues. And the people who were in What Not to Wear were lined up half naked in front of like the audience and made to hear what people were saying about their bodies. It's interesting.
It was What Not to Wear, I think, in particular, was very much part of that kind of humiliation ritual television. And also this tough love thing, because I think a lot of Tyra's stuff, particularly that one really famous We Were All Rooting for You screaming match was, well, not screaming match, she just screamed at some poor girl who couldn't defend herself in that situation. A lot of that is presented under this guise of tough love, which I find particularly interesting coming from a Black woman. FD Signify has a very interesting video on Lauryn Hill and sort of tough love culture within the Black community that I probably shouldn't speak to, but I feel like that was an easy narrative for someone like Tyra to attach to their abusive behaviors. It's actually tough love. It's not that I am abusing a girl. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Something about Tyra that always just felt like Oprah magnified to me. Essentially, because that's what she based, I think, everything she does career-wise upon it. And there's the insidiousness that I think is also there with Oprah, but somehow we've kind of managed to overlook, because I think Tyra's less elegant about it.
Do you remember when we talked about pop mothers and daughters? Like, Oprah is the mother of Tyra and RuPaul.
Candace Owens.
And Candace Owens is evil Oprah, isn't she? Like evil,
she is.
More overtly evil Oprah. But here's my question. This is a chicken and the egg situation. Who came first, Tyra or RuPaul? Because I'm very familiar with Tyra in kind of clips of her being ridiculous, but her screen presence is so similar to RuPaul, to even the kind of, okay, Kat Black said this, okay, not me. So it's okay that I'm just repeating something that a black woman said. Kat Black once said, and this just rings really true to me, that RuPaul is kind of like a black man doing blackface. And I get that vibe from Tyra as well. They have this very kind of, RuPaul, I always associated it with his upbringing where he grew up kind of poor and then was within nightlife rubbing shoulders with different classes and adopted this. I think I kind of do this actually, where I've kind of adopted a posher tone, more of a regal tone. But then when he wants to reconnect to his blackness, he'll kind of put on this kind of black voice and do this thing that comes across as very insincere and very kind of affected. And
it's doing the black caricature, which Tyra does as well.
They seem their screen presences are so similar. When they're being serious, they're in kind of regal mic mode. And when they are joking, then they're suddenly black.
Well, I mean, Drag Race started as a parody of America's Next Top Model. That is the source text. In terms of actual RuPaul and Tyra Banks specifically, I agree with you. I can see the lineage. They come from the Oprah tree. I would say probably RuPaul comes from the Tyra tree, if I'm going to be honest. Even though RuPaul was doing this everybody say love thing very early on to the start of his career, I think more so coalesced a bit later on into the form that it is today after finding that success. With Tyra, I think the reason she went down that route is because I think it's one of the few routes that were available to her as a black woman who became a media personality and then a talk show host. She was following this Oprah route. There was one way you can be black. And what you said, the quote that you mentioned took me to, I think Bell Hooks said that RuPaul does drag as a white woman.
I can't believe
Tyra does that.
She said that. I did not know that Bell Hooks
I think it's Bell Hooks. I might be making that up. I hope I'm not, but I believe she did. But with Tyra, the blackness has always been something so deeply, deeply tied with her identity because when it came right down to it, she was the only black girl walking the pair stage from America. And so I think that became part of her narrative in a way that, maybe ended up curdling when it met up with this 2000s, the reality TV fragmented Jerry Springer-ish meets Oprah amalgamation. I think it kind of became evil and toxic.
It was also never, I don't think it was ever, how do I say? Not that it was not sincere. So Oprah is someone who is quite seamless in her presentation on camera, and her kind of screen presence is quite seamless.
She's more charismatic.
Yeah, there's something jarring about Tyra and RuPaul. There's something jarring about when they go into their funny black mode, basically. But
I think there's a more performative aspect in them. And I wonder if that's just the nature of that is simply because I grew up with Oprah being on TV 5 nights a week, so with her, she just did it more than them for longer. So she just eventually had to build up that comfortable bone. But the thing I wanted to say is I do find it really frustrating the way the narrative is all coalescing around Tyra Banks right now as the ultimate roots evil of this thing, this show. And I understand why it's happening. Her face is on the show. It's her stamp. She's the executive producer. It is her name. But I just really resist. I just resist it. I resist the idea that we're going to blame the black women for all of this. You know what I mean? Because there was a lot of other people in that room, and all the people that in that documentary, like Jay Alexander, who were just that was fucked up, wasn't it? You were also co-signing it. I thought the funniest fucking, what really got my fucking goat watching this show, that got my goat. I had to get really ancient auntie with this. What annoyed me is that there was a part of the documentary with Manuel, who was I sent her an email. I told her, thank you so much for these 9 years, but I will be leaving for a different opportunity. And then she's and then I heard nothing from her. And then 3 days later, she sent me back an email saying I was disappointed. And the lawyers called me and they said, okay, we need to find a way for you to stay. And then I stayed on for 10 more years. Girl, I was girl.
I kind
sister.
of briefly lost my way. I kind of wasn't really paying attention for a second. And then suddenly he was getting fired, and I was like, oh wait, didn't you leave? Like, what's happening?
No, he stayed for 5 more years, 10 more seasons, and then he was fired again. Also, the thing, like, I feel people are really angry online, I've noticed, about how could she fire these 2 people who were her friend because the boss of the network told her she has to keep the show going. I'm just like, the boss of the network told her she had to keep the show going.
Yeah, well, I don't see why that's so out of...
I'm not angry at her at that. I understand it.
Yeah, I don't see why that's so out of the realms of possibility, because she eventually got fired herself.
Yeah, like, she was not the person in control, and so I don't like that. And I just think, like, that it's symptomatic of the way energy be directed to it, where I feel like she's kind of being used as a scapegoat, and she takes a lion's share of the blame. But I'm saying this now because I feel like it's worth noting, because misogynoir is in the air. So, like, when you're drag with awareness, wear your mask, you know? Like, don't get infected with it, because I feel like it's so easy to tip into those discourses and the situations that a lot of people happen.
Yeah, I do completely agree. I'll push back slightly in just that if she were to engage with the criticisms more sincerely, instead of doing her kind of Trumpian, you know, oh, we've all learned together. I was learning along with you. I had no... Do you know what I mean? There's just something so insincere about this.
So funny, though. She's so insane. She's so insane.
Yeah, that's the thing. There's something so performative about Tyra that I think that's what encourages that a little bit. But generally, I do have to agree. I'm just like, yeah, pushing back slightly. But I do agree that I think that it's kind of like what I was saying about Lena Dunham in the Girls episode, was that, although actually maybe I shouldn't be referring back to that because I don't know what's going out.
Oh, well, you did give them a little preview. Girls episode coming on up.
But yeah, I think a lot of the time women tend to be used, and particularly there's so much more vitriol when it comes to Black women, but women will be used as a shield. Because this is true, actually. Tyra may be a monster and may be ridiculous, but it was a trend in television. Like, you couldn't get a show about anything without there being some sort of humiliation ritual. As you say, like, the point of American Idol, there was a whole half a season that's just completely a humiliation ritual.
Queer Eye was doing this. Queer Eye for the Straight Guy, the original version, was a part humiliation ritual for the straight man. 4 gay men came over and yelling at them and telling them, you're a slob, no one will love you. That was part of it. It was part of it. You're really right. It was so deeply tied to reality television. And while I think, yeah, like, drag her for it, that is worth acknowledging. She shouldn't have kowtowed to it, but so were so many other people. The reason I bring all that specifically up is because what I'm trying to say isn't that Tyra shouldn't be dragged for this. What I'm trying to say is that I think it's a shared complicity. And that is amongst the crew, the production, the people, but also the audience.
And the audience.
Also the audience.
Right. I think her problem is that she's so insincere, like I've said. But she is right. People were tuning in you know, droves to this kind of television. Like, it was
and are tuning in now. They're tuning into it now because, like I said, this documentary is doing the same thing. It's sensationalizing a traumatic experience of many young women for our conception. And part of what's happening is a lot of us, maybe who were part of that moment, are having trouble dealing with the fact that we were complicit in it and trying to, like, find a way to make it better by saying, actually, no, she's the villain. It's her. Yeah. Shading it in with nuance would make us uncomfortable because, you know, that it's not as clean.
Abuse, is
hard. And like I said, confront our own complicity as, like, an audience with this abuse, because ultimately, if we have to, where does that bring us? Okay, does that mean that, like, I can't watch any more of this content, even though I do enjoy it? I did have a moment watching this show being like, I guess the successor of this is something like The Real Housewives, right? And, like, I literally finished this, and then this morning I watched The Real Housewives of Potomac reunion, where one of the leads is dealing with, like, a fraud investigation that could end up with her in jail for 10 years. And that is, like, trauma porn that we're all sort of engaging with. And like,
why are we glamorizing? Like, this is just an issue in general. Like, I think the bro version of this is probably like The Wolf of Wall Street or something. But why are we glamorizing criminal fraudsters? Like, there's not even anything sexy about what they're doing. But
and that is where the line of something like America's Next Top Model eventually led us to, right? And so if I wanted to actually respond to this in a productive way, it means not watching stuff like that.
I don't know if that's it, though, because I will say that, like, I do think this program was kind of a bit too sensationalistic, and it didn't delve deep enough into the systems behind what was happening. What would probably have been a more helpful format would have been if it had been a study of reality TV as a whole, maybe, and these trends as a whole. But critiquing this stuff is important. Changing the way that we consume this stuff or the way it's produced is important. I think that's the way you do it. I'm just not sure this documentary, I think it's a step towards that, but it's not doing enough.
I'm not sure if it's a step towards. I agree with you. I completely agree with you. I think ultimately, like, I keep engaging with this stuff because I feel like being someone there to critique and like to point and to say this is doing this and this is doing that is useful. I mean, it's my work. So of course I do it. I don't know whether I subscribe to the idea that this is good natured, that this is well intentioned. I think this is meant to be, especially because of like thinking of the context of it's coming from Netflix. It's coming as part of this sort of reality docu-series, almost cheaply made, quickly produced, but highly connected. So able to get like people really deeply involved with the productions in a central stage. So we'll get attention.
Netflix is such a wildly exploitative. They're collapsing film and television industries. They don't pay their actors. Netflix are doing worse than anything America's Next Top Model did in many ways, but it's just not captured on camera. We find out through this stuff through social media that the cast of Orange is the New Black are barely getting paid residuals, that they had to ride the bus with the extras, that they were not paid well for being a main cast member,
They collapsed the television writing industry. Now people don't write television that they used to for years and years. And we're all like, hey, it's not working. And no one's getting paid because of the Netflix impact. So yeah, you're very right. Like, so I think it becomes an interesting sort of exercise because we have to sort of ask ourselves, then how can we be like conscientious consumers? What does that actually mean practically? Yeah. And it's a more complicated answer than I think are the initial sort of things that might come float up in our minds. So I think this is the use that could come out of our discussion about this. At least it makes us think about that.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. Also, I think the idea of good, something I also thought about watching this. I think it's really interesting to think about. A lot of what was happening on the show came out of this idea of like quote unquote good representation, right? Of trying to like push diversity sort of representation, whatever, but actually wasn't doing that. It was causing harm, and it's made me kind of be more reflective about the things that might be causing harm that I'm thinking of as good. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I think it was part of this interesting wave. It kind of partly kicked off this trend of these large ensemble, very diverse, very large ensemble casts of television. Like it was the kind of reality version of something like Glee, where it's your white cast members that tend to be the focus still. It was a way of virtue signaling towards diversity and inclusion, but without having to really do it. Front and center are still your white cast members. And that seemed to be the case with a lot of America's Next Top Model, where there would be kind of a central white girl who would win.
Yeah, largely. I think, though, I guess while we're on this, I think the question of accountability, let's just bring that up. I think I highlight it because I think one of my big frustrations in the show is it felt like nobody was taking accountability. Everybody was like passing the ball. I think we said that already about Tyra, but we've not talked about like all the other judges were also doing that. But as they were doing that, actually, it's just Tyra's fault, guys. This is fine. I thought it was really notable the way that they were very careful to not blame higher ups in the production. They didn't really talk about like the CEO of UPN pushing for these things, except from like one moment where Tyra was like, I fought with Les Moonves about it, which I'm not sure I believe.
Famous abuser, Les Moonves.
Yeah, I thought there was other things that were really interesting in the context about how they brought up the way that Les Moonves, who really cracked down after the Janet Jackson Super Bowl, and how that like impacted the show. I thought that was really interesting that they really just like mentioned and like dropped and moved on. Yeah, I think there's a lot of food for thought. I don't know if I'd say people should watch this documentary, but I learned nothing. I honestly, now I'm holding my breath because, like in 5 years, this is going to be a Drag Race documentary, right? It will. It will. As two queers who know a lot about Drag Race and the production antics that the Drag Race universe has been up to.
I think Drag Race has they've been able to learn from Top Model's mistakes, even from the beginning. And even in terms of like the format of the show, like so much of it is based on Top Model. So I don't think, nothing occurs to me that is as bad as what they went through on.
No. I've seen people online being like, oh, this is going to be a Drag Race thing that's going to come up eventually. And I was like, well, it wouldn't really touch RuPaul because I think the thing that RuPaul learned is I don't interact with these people unless I'm on camera, which I thought was really interesting. The way Tyra in those early seasons, you could see her really taking them out for dinner, sitting with them, you know, like interacting with them in a way that I feel like would never happen today, and RuPaul would never allow it. I think the other thing why it won't happen is I think the fact that Drag Race is a queer show with a lot of queer people involved, and I think because of that aspect, even as unethical as some of their practices we know are, I think it would still be protected by the community.
Well, I think so. Well, this is the thing. I disagree slightly in that I think that it probably would. I imagine in 5 years it will be a Drag Race documentary. I just think it's going to be a much worse documentary. I think there's you know, less scandalous stuff to report. And I think that you're right about it being protected by the community. I think they would be treading on eggshells a lot more than they were with this. Yeah.
I mean that also like the people involved in production itself would be like, no, the show is too important for us to like really shit on it in a way, which I think is a different interesting tension that happens there that I think, I don't know. I don't think the Black community is also like protecting Tyra.
I don't think
comparison. Not that I think they should.
No, and I don't think she's tied herself to the Black community particularly. She's part of this wave of diverse television. She's not tied to Black TV. She's tied to like, you know.
That's a very interesting point. I'm not sure I completely agree with you because like Tyra Banks was on Fresh Prince of Bel-Air and you know like
she started her career. She distanced herself from it eventually.
I get your point. I'm just saying like because of the start of her career, I feel like Black people will tie her to Black culture in a deeper way that feels like it lasts forever. I feel like that's something that just is hard to dislodge from her narrative. But what I will say is I think that the star image of Tyra Banks, I think was crafted to appeal for white people.
I don't see Tyra engaged with the Black community, like protected and kind of revered by the Black community the way that Naomi is. I don't see that.
I think that's just because she's not as big of a star as Naomi.
I think she's probably more well known than Naomi, isn't she? Because she had like a more mainstream with Top Model. She had a more mainstream avenue to.
I always thought, I don't know, maybe you're right. I can't really ascertain that. I always just got a feeling that she's less well known because I always think of her as like more American based.
Yes.
So, which is very credible. But like Naomi, I always think of as more internationally. I feel like Naomi will be recognized in more places in the world. Does that make sense?
Yes. No, I think Naomi's also much more revered and less. I think Tyra is very much like pop Naomi, like Candy Naomi. But
exactly.
Like what I also think because she's light skinned, she was kind of absorbed into white culture or into the kind of homogenous kind of.
Is she light skinned? I never think of Tyra Banks as light skinned.
Don't you? Do you not think of you know when she was confused with Beyonce in the she's not dark skinned like Naomi.
No, she's definitely not dark skinned. I think of her as just brown skinned. But I hear your point.
I just think she was because she was light skinned. She was one more embraced by your mainstream culture, and then two, I think that means she wasn't as she's not as revered within Black online communities that I see. I'm going to say I don't want to speak for a Black community.
I hear you. I mean, I think like she's not revered today just because of there's been years of backlash, years of narratives about Tyra that kind of culminate in a place where like she's just simply not have that position in the community.
Yeah, but, and she's also like America's Next Top Model is and reality TV of that era. She's so tied to America's Next Top Model. I think that's thought of as just like trash television.
Yeah, I think I feel compelled to like make the point that I do think she's very deeply tied to the Black community. I will say that. I disagree with you on that one.
Okay.
But what I will say, if I could riff on your point, is that I think she's a Black girl who was seen as marketable for white people, as acceptable for white people. And I think that is what you're reading.
I think she's had a similar Halle Berry, actually, I think, in some ways.
Yeah, I think that's not a bad comparison. Yeah, I think there's something there. And it's interesting how Halle Berry is like fighting against that in this point in her career at the moment. And Tyra is in Australia selling ice cream.
And she's so ridiculous. Do you know who else she reminds me of, actually? Is
the Joker?
No,
Harley Quinn.
She's not a Joker or Harley Quinn. No, she's not cool enough. She's way too try hard. She's like Kylo Ren or something. She's like a fanboy version of a villain. She reminds me of Meghan Markle. Actually, is who she.
Oh,
just
all right. Say more. I don't know where you're going with this one.
It's so fake and it doesn't work. At least RuPaul seems like sincere at times. I think RuPaul has a level.
Name a sincere RuPaul moment quickly.
I watched him on that. You know that twink medium. Do you know who I'm talking about? There's like some little medium.
Yes, Tyler something. I know who you're talking about.
Yeah,
that scam artist.
Yes. And he reconnected RuPaul with his dead mother and RuPaul. I think that was sincere of RuPaul, even if Tyler wasn't sincere at all. But I think there's some sincerity to RuPaul. I think there is zero sincerity to Tyra. And I think Meghan Markle is someone, I don't want to criticize Meghan Markle too. I actually don't really have an opinion on Meghan Markle, except that I think her on-camera persona, it comes across as very like smiley. I just remember my mum hates this moment where Oprah's like, "How are you?" And Meghan Markle's like, "I'm fine, thank you for asking." And she's like so smiley and fake about it. It just doesn't come across as sincere, and I think remotely sincere. And
I gotta say, I'm a person who thinks sincerity is overrated. So fight against it. You know, we need more art pop. We need more.
Completely 100% agree. I just think your average viewer is not Susan Sog camping it up like we are. They're not quite where we are. So I think it changes your overall public's perception of someone. Even though I agree. Totally.
I will say this. I don't think we need to kick Tyra out of the tent because of America's Next Top Model. Honestly, the actual true story is Tyra Banks' talk show, which no one talks about because that seems to like be lost content media. But if you want to actually cancel Tyra, you need to go back when she was dressing up in fat suits, when she was doing whiteface on her shows and going to the park. She was pretending to be a homeless woman. I think she was Jewish at one point. She became a Jewish woman at one point. There was a lot happening on that show that I feel like we should be talking about if you want to take her down. It's not going to be ANTM because in ANTM she was getting paid to be ridiculous. And I'm going to blame Ken Mock, sir, because if we're going to put it down on paper, if we're going to look at your list of accomplishments and your filmography, I'm just going to say there's a similar strand of tyrannicism, let's say, of monsterdom in your genre of shows in your history. So I'm not going to completely blame the black women on this one. You take some heat too, man.
I think we need to be talking about, why has there not been a TV program going after Simon Cowell? Like, why?
Because Simon Cowell still has too much power in the fucking media, unfortunately.
Yeah, like it's
so it'll happen. It'll happen 5 years after he's dead.
Oh, but he's gonna live forever. His head's gonna be in a jar, but like attached to like some really buff body. Like,
you know what? I imagine he'll be in a really twink body. I don't know why. I know we expect buff, but he'd be like, I'm gonna go twink.
Oh, maybe. Actually, he's been trying to go twink with his new face, hasn't he?
Oh, God bless. God bless. I did want to ask you one last question, though. So maybe this could be our ender. Yeah.
Okay.
I wanted to know, what was your favorite controversy from the ones that were listed on the show?
Oh, okay. Give me 1 minute.
You're like trying to find the one that was like the least problematic to say you enjoyed.
Yeah, I'm just getting like a flashback. I'm thinking of the girl that was told to be careful about her oily, about the whatever she was putting on.
I think they're the funner ones. They didn't do the fun ones. Tyra Banks gave a man a beard, a fake beard wig, and I think that was a trauma that she inflicted upon him. There was a girl that she gave her a weave that got infected. That was hilarious.
Oh my God, the tooth stuff was so awful.
Oh, that was a lot.
Yeah, I can't think of a sad one.
The show skipped there was some fun ones. I'm not gonna lie to you guys. The show was very highly watched.
In the show, but I don't remember them. Maybe the blackface was the funniest one, actually.
You do love yourself some blackface.
Black and brown face was the least offensive of your. That's like
twice. She did it twice. Okay, so this is my final note on Tyra Banks. I think that once we understand that Tyra Banks is just simply a Batman villain, it all makes sense, and we can move on.
Do you know who Tyra Banks is? If she's a Batman villain, she's Calendar Girl, because Calendar Girl was a model. Calendar Girl was a model, and then she turned ugly or whatever, so she became a villain. And then they take her mask off, and then she's still just so good looking, and it's just society, man. And I think Tyra is a mirror being held up to society.
See, I think Tyra Banks is the Riddler, but specifically Jim Carrey's Riddler.
Yes. Okay. No, actually, I take it back because she's too much. She's not damaged enough to be Calendar Girl.
It's just sort of chaos and confusion.
100% right. She's the Riddler.
It's chaos and confusion.
Yeah, I don't even think she's Jim Carrey Riddler. I think she's Paul Dano Riddler.
Wow. Yeah. And with like a dash of Jigsaw. Just a little bit of Jigsaw.
Oh, yes, she is Jigsaw.
Do you want to play a game? It's very that. Honestly, I might make a little track of that with the America's Next Top Model music. And then not want to play a game. No, play a game. No.
You
have to. All right. Thank you so much, honey. Say goodbye to the people.
Goodbye, people.
Tyra Mail will be on the way soon. Goodbye.